one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, we will go on to, we had our closed session already and there's nothing to report. No actionable items were taken during closed session. So for now, if we could have an approval of our agenda for this evening.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Let's see. And then we have tonight our minutes from the August 23rd and the October 11th. So any substantive changes to the August 23rd minutes for the council?
No, and that's the one I abstained on last.
You
year,
abstained,
which is
okay.
why it's here.
Right. Any public comment on the minutes? All right. Let's do this. Actually, let's go right into the November. Let's see, what's the date again? October 11th minutes. Any substantive changes to the October 11th minutes? Public comments? No. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve. I'll second that.
First by West, second by Tuttle. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to council reports, committee assignments. Let's see, Mr. Tuttle, starting to my right. Do you have any reports from any of your boards that you serve on? Sure.
I do have a couple of quick ones. So first, I wanted to say we've formed, I'm delighted to announce we formed a website that
Nice.
consists of myself and Eli and Gabe, the city manager and city clerk. And we had our first meeting on October 27th. We discussed the website's current state, technology, et cetera. And we came up with both a short-term and a long-term plan. And the short term is to kind of shore up any missing content, any maybe do quick design changes, and then longer term, we're going to investigate 2 to 4 vendors and in addition to the existing one, and decide and also gather requirements from the city staff as well as the community and figure out what's best. So anyway, so it's really great meeting, good start there. I attended also the Planning Commission meeting last month on October 19th. The Planning Commission voted to extend the Rancheria's grading permit and design review for the Harbor ASBS project. So that's a green infrastructure enhancement down in the harbor. For those of you that don't know that, with what do you call it? Linear drains and pavers and rain gardens and so forth. I wanted to just bring up the general plan because we did talk about the general plan a bit at the Planning Commission meeting. There are 7, for those of you who don't know what a general plan is, that's kind of the document or the blueprint for the city, why, you know, all of the development for the city. And so there are 7 mandated elements that we have to have. Of those 7, we are making really good progress on about 4 or 5. So my recommendation and request, based on a discussion with the chair of the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission in general, is that we, 1, include the general plan from now on in the staff report. So, you know, maybe an update on that we can get from Trevor through you, Eli, every month. Also, we need to schedule a meeting with the Coastal Commission because we're not getting prioritization from them on feedback. And then finally, I think we need to kind of work on this. A general plan going forward is priority planners, a top priority, and maybe that there are some contractual incentives in place to ensure that. And the reason I say that is that we're getting to kind of the last mile on this, and it could languish. So we can really push for that. That would be great. So that's kind of our report now. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments for Chair? Okay. I agree with your recommendations and requests. I would like to see a regular report in the city manager's report regarding the general plan. even a running tally of the number of elements that have been reviewed, all 9 elements and where they're at with the city, with the planning commission, with the coastal commission. Those with experience to working with the coastal commission, is it common for us to meet, or you're asking for us to meet with the coastal commission?
Yeah, I think the city needs to help put some emphasis and prioritization. They have had some staff turnover, and I think we're going to bog down now.
Okay.
If we don't kind of continue to emphasize how important it is to the city to finish this up.
Right. And then the contractual, take a closer look at SHN's work with prioritizing this for Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we don't have some incentive for them to finish
Mhm.
the contract, finish the work, it, could just go on in perpetuity.
Do we have a contract with SHN? We must. For services rendered, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's the general services.
Should we review that and see if we need to see if we're,
Yeah,
in
maybe there's
writing?
something in there now.
Yeah, there may be something in there now that we can build upon, or maybe there's nothing in there. So maybe we look at that general services contract, Eli,
Okay,
and see if we can,
yeah, I can take a look at it.
yeah, thank you. Mr. West.
I don't have anything from HDOG this month because I had to miss the meeting. So I just will say the Trails Committee will be meeting next week. So we are moving on the Trails Committee, and hopefully next month we'll have reports on both.
Great. I met with both Humboldt Transit Authority and Redwood Region Economic Development. Unfortunately, none of the issues really pertain much to Trinidad in terms of housing and transportation needs. We're a unique, tiny little city with one bus route and not much room for housing. But it is interesting how both Humboldt Transit Authority and Redwood Region Economic Development are both focusing on housing and transportation. So if I come up with some more sort of general plan or general information, I'll bring that back. All right, moving on to staff report. Mr. Knapp.
So tonight, the Lieutenant McCall is in training. He provides training, so he's unable to join us tonight. So as far as the city manager's report, the highlight is regarding water. Fortunately, even before the rain started on October 31st, the stream flow was at 2.033 in CFS. And after the first rain on November 1st, it shot up to over 4, and then subsequently came down to 3.5. And then since then, we've had a lot of rain. So that's all encouraging. Also, there was a last known water leak in Saunders Plaza, and we had to have 4 of the businesses that would have been affected. So we timed it around their open schedule. And so that was repaired at the end of last month. But other than that, as far as the overall water loss for last month, which is at 11.25%, that's the best I've seen in a long, long time. And that's even mostly before that underleak was fixed. So,
And industry standard says aim for 10 to 20%.
Mhm.
I'm okay with 11%.
right.
Wow, that is some really good news.
Yeah, other than that, I did want to note that on December the 5th, our coastal resilience project will have a public meeting. This first public meeting on December 5th will be from 6 to 8 p.m. and it will be via Zoom. Subsequently, in 2023, we will be having other public meetings, and we will have some of those live. And then the other point is today is election day, and the League of California Cities sent out a notice that they do have a new mayors and council members academy for 2023. The Northern California one will be January 18th through 20th in Sacramento. So that's something to consider if any of the new or relatively new council members are interested in. And that's all I have for right now. I'll entertain any questions regarding the staff, if anyone has any other questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Eli. And at this point, I'd just like to read this for consistency. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not appearing on the agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, maintain decorum, and avoid personal attacks on staff, members of the council, and or other members of the public. Council and staff responses will be minimal for non-agenda items. Do we have any public comment on items not found on the agenda this evening? Mr. Madrone.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff, and members of the community. Steve Madrone, Fox Farm Road. I wanted to commend the council on your work this last year, getting, $12 million in grants between you and West Haven for fixing leaks, for putting in a new major water tank, giving you more capacity, and for the intertie between the two communities for emergencies. That is fantastic work, and I commend you all, including Becky and the rest.
She's on there.
Hi, Becky. Good job on that. And all the other grants. I saw a report, I think, last month with a huge amount of grants that have been coming into the city with staff assistants, Becky and others, and you, Eli, and just tremendous work. Good job, really. And as far as water goes, nice to hear the flows. We're at 2.03.
03.
What a difference the timing of the rain makes, right? We often think of what's the total rainfall for the year, and that certainly matters, but timing and intensity is everything. So last year we had about the same amount of rainfall for the water year, which is October 1st through September 30th, as the year before. But we had almost 3 times the flow of the creek at this time of year as we did the year before. Why? Because the rain we got came in the late spring and early summer. So that, and it came in low intensity rainfall, which infiltrates much better, recharging the groundwater. And as this recent set of storms shows, Lufenholz Creek and those uplifted sand terraces are fantastic at infiltrating water, which you see a very quick response on the hydrograph when you get just even a little bit of rain, because that percolates, comes to the creek. And so really nice when you get, if you're gonna have a dry part to the year, let it be fall or winter. Having the rain in spring and early summer is just so fantastic for the water too. So good job on the rain dance and whatever everybody was doing out there. The other thing is, I think you've seen in the matter reunion today, just came out, that there was a dog attack at the state park. And I realize it's state park property and their jurisdiction, but it's within the city limits. And I know you can't take any action on this, but I think it might be good if the city manager would also weigh in with the sheriff's department and with state parks, asking for this gentleman and his poodles to be dealt with. This has been going on for a while, and this got really serious the other day. So that's all I have.
Are you talking about State Beach?
Talking about it, the parking lot is where it happened on the state park property.
Okay.
In city limits,
Yeah.
on state park property. So you don't have jurisdiction there, but being in the city limits, you could certainly weigh in with a letter expressing your concerns about this finally being dealt with, because this has happened before and it just keeps happening. And it's not okay. This was really a bad situation.
Is this the guy that has the dogs? Is it
Yeah.
parked in front of the town hall with all those poodles in the car?
Oh, wow.
So it's that. So somebody that we see on the street here regularly with the.
Oh, yeah, no, I know, Frank.
Yeah.
And what he has on his website about this dog is very much opposite of the behavior of the dogs.
Interesting. Okay.
And the woman who had the dog that got attacked, who's had several surgeries now, was actually trying to save her poodle, and something was biting her finger, and it turned out to be this guy who was actually biting her finger. He says he thought he was biting one of his dogs. So anyway, I just think it'd be good to weigh in. I'm going to be weighing in with the sheriff and the dog control officers as well, but more the merrier.
And I do want to thank you for your comments, and also to publicly say that we do have a position open for our grants manager. So Becky's not going to work here forever, and she's an incredibly valuable resource. But we need a new grants manager, so spread the word out, spread the word. Yeah,
You know,
hard shoes to fill.
the Watershed Council gives you your stakeholder group along with this council. And that is absolutely at the forefront of why you've been so successful with grant. I mean, you've got good grant writing, you've got good projects, but having a stakeholder group, the Watershed Council.
Yeah.
What have you brought in? Maybe 20, 25 million in the last 15 years since we formed the Watershed Council. So
Yeah.
good job all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Other items from the floor? Anyone on Zoom land? Okay. All right, bringing it back then, we have our consent agenda. Again, just for consistency, all matters in the consent are considered routine by the city council and are enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is requested by any council member, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A single opportunity for public comment on the consent is available. Any items that the council wants to pull? Any discussion or comments from the public on the consent calendar? Nothing on the screen. All right, bringing it back. Do we have a motion for tonight's consent agenda?
I move to accept the consent agenda. Second.
First by West, second by Tuttle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 1, project update discussion, Trinidad Water Systems Drought Resiliency Project. So we are discussion item number 1 in the packet. Eli, who are we going to have?
Yeah, sure.
Take?
So you're right, it is Dave.
There we go.
So for this project, the Trinidad Water System Drought Resiliency Project, this is a grant that Becky had worked on, which is approximately $5 million, and that deals with replacing one of our existing water storage tanks that's 150,000 gallons with the new one that's 300,000 gallons, and also adding some new piping, replacing the pipes that run from the water plant to the water tanks. So we have Dagan from GHD, and he will walk through the PowerPoints and I'll turn it over to him.
Great, thank you, Eli. I'm wondering if Gabe, can you put up the presentation, Gabe?
He's working on it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Can we work with that up there?
I think so, because
Reasonable?
yep.
So, yeah, let me turn Dagan out and we can start whenever he's ready.
Okay, looks good. I'm ready.
All the volume we get on Dagan. He's gonna have to talk louder.
Ready to
There you go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Eli, for the teeing up for the project here. This project is an interesting one. Basically, what the idea of this project is that we're replacing a 150,000 gallon water tank, and we're also replacing a leaking water line. And so I'll get to those details as we get through the presentation. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So the overview of this presentation, we're going to be talking about the grant funding, how that's working. And we're also going to talk about the two components of the project, which is the replacement of the water tank and the replacement of the water line. And then at the very end of the presentation, we'll talk about the schedule. Next slide, please.
Dagan, is it possible to be a little bit louder on your end? It would help everyone here.
Sure. Is this better?
That was a little better, yeah.
Okay, good. I'll just speak a little.
There you go. There you
Little
go.
louder here. Okay, next slide, please. So the project is funded by the Department of Water Resources, and the project includes approximately about 7,500 line of leaky water mains and an existing 150 gallon redwood water storage tank that we're going to be replacing with a 300,000 gallon steel water storage tank. The project helps reduce the loss of water and increase storage, and the grant covers the design, environmental compliance, and construction of the above items. Again, construction is planned to be completed by 2023. Next slide, please. So what we're doing here is you can see the two water tanks that are there. The one that we're replacing is the one to the right, which is kind of ironic because it's the newest water tank. So we're replacing that with the one tank to the right, which is 150,000, with one 300,000 gallon steel tank. This tank is in the greatest need, and we're also trying to look for future planning endeavors as we go. So we're looking for the replacement of the second tank with a larger tank, but we're also considering additional room for the future for additional tanks that may be installed. We also need additional access around the tanks just for construction and also for ease of operation and maintenance. And we also need to add a chlorine booster station. So next slide, please. So as you can see, here's the main problem. This is the new tank, and you can see that the steel bands that were wrapped around it were made of ductile iron and then wrapped with a PVC coating that just came apart when it gets exposed to the sunlight. The other tank has galvanized steel wrapping bands, and it seems to be in quite a bit better condition. Next slide, please. So here's some improvements that we're going to be making on the access road. If you can look at the picture to the left, there's some trees. There's about 7 to 8 trees that we're going to need to remove just because the flatbed truck that needs to get up there to move in the new tank can't maneuver around this area. And so this is one of the components that we're working through on the environmental compliance side. We're also going to be improving the road slightly by adding some additional aggregate in the road. There's a new culvert at the entrance and some additional brushes and shrubs that will be cleared from that. Next slide, please. So the water line replacement project is we're replacing temporary water line on Van Wyck Trail with permanent water line on Edwards. So we're going to be connecting from Glendo to Hector and the new water line on Van Wyck. We're replacing approximately 6,400 feet of old asbestos concrete pipe from the water plant to storage tanks with new dual lines with a dedicated supply line and a secondary distribution line. Good. Next slide, please. So currently, work is in progress right now, and we are doing field investigations and working on CEQA, and we've started the design process. The surveyor is showing up next week to start delineating the topography for the tank site. And then we have a geotechnical investigation that is slotted, I believe, for the 3rd week in November to get some borings about how we're going to be dealing with the structural components on the tank site itself. Permits are in process, and we'll be moving through with that November through April with the intent of having this wrapped up with permits in hand by the end of April. And as I mentioned, design is underway right now. We're still working on that with the intent to be complete by the end of April of 2023 and putting the project out to bid by the end of May 2023, securing a contractor to do the work with construction beginning probably around June 15th and ending sometime in December 2023. And I believe that is it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much, Dagan. Any questions from the council or the general public?
I just have one. I was curious how much water can be put on that site. You're going to talk about having a 300,000 gallon tank, and a second 300,000 gallon tank. You're going to clear for more water at that lower site. I thought there were some limits on how much could be usefully put there.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're talking about limits based on basically the limits of the property that the city owns, we have
how much the water could be put at that point that we needed to have water up above to get down to the filter before it goes. If there are limits on how much water can be usefully put on that site before it.
I think he's talking about the quality of the water that sits too long.
Yeah, sits there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, and that's the need for the added chlorine booster station that will be treating that stale water that comes out of there. One of the logistical problems we have from an engineering side here is that based on the telemetry between the two tanks, the tanks are plumbed to be in series. And so when one tank fills, the other tank fills at the same time, which means that the tank that we're replacing can't be higher than the tank that it's sitting next to. So the foundation is going to have to be enlarged to accommodate for the 300,000. We're doubling the capacity with this. So, and to let you know, in future endeavors, we're looking at replacing the second tank too with a 300,000 gang. So the total water storage capacity would be about 600,000 gallons. But for stale water, for water that sits around for a while, that's the need for the chlorine booster station.
Dagan, the construction is scheduled for June through December. Can you just kind of walk me through what that means for, our own storage capacity at a time when there's not much water coming out of the creek, potentially? Is the one tank that you're replacing taken offline and totally taken down, or is the other tank, the 300,000 gallon tank, being built off to the side? Can you just kind of share with us what the plan is there?
Yeah, so what the plan is to completely demolish the tank that we're replacing. And we're going to need to do some of the work on the foundation to enlarge the foundation to accommodate the larger tank size. We realize this is an extremely high priority. So this component of the project will be done first with the construction of the tank, and then in tandem working with the replacement of the water line as this goes. But the intent on this is to get this built on and online as soon as possible. But yeah, you're right, Steve. We're going to be demolishing that tank and then installing a new one on that site.
So for that time being, then the city really only will have 150,000 gallon storage capacity.
That's correct.
Okay. Good to know.
And I anticipate, we're trying to look at the construction schedule on this. We're trying to push the total construction of the tank within probably 4 to 5 weeks. But we're still looking at that schedule right now.
Okay.
So hopefully, if they started in June, we would potentially have a new tank online by the middle of July.
Got it.
Dave, question for you. Is there any salvage value for this old tank that's getting demolished? Is there any value to the city to take that redwood?
That's a really good question. And typically, yes, there is value. This is redwood that some of it has rotted and decayed, but there are parts of the redwood that are still valuable. And this was something that we wanted to bring up too. It really depends on how you want to approach this in the contract documents. We can ask the contractor to salvage what we can and then store it on a city site if the city is interested in doing that. There's multiple ways of going around that. But when we get to the point where we're actually creating the bid documents, I think the city would need to determine if you guys actually want to deal with this material or not.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you replace this 150,000 gallon tank with a 300,000, does it just go higher or wider? How does it fit onto the property?
So it's going to go wider and it's going to be the same height as the other tank. And so, like I was mentioning earlier, the two tanks, when they're feeding, they feed water at the same time. So it doesn't make sense from an engineering side to make the tank that we're replacing higher than the other one, because there would always be an amount of freeboard within that tank that will never be used.
Does that make it more difficult to look at two larger tanks on that property?
No, it doesn't. We've been out there twice doing a preliminary survey right now, and we have the space to accommodate what we need.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments from folks? Katie?
Katie Breckenridge. I was wondering about when they're taking the tank down, it's in June, isn't that fire season? And is there a plan for if water is in demand?
So I think I got part of that question, which is, are we accounting for fire danger, given that we're taking out some of that capacity for fire? And this is a challenge in multiple ways with this. We obviously want that tank to be offline as short as possible. But if fire is a concern during the construction job, the contractor will be having a water truck on site, not only to mitigate dust activity, but also to control any fire that would be there. I don't think fire during construction is a concern. It's more of the city having the capacity to put out fires if something was to happen. But you're right, that is a concern. That is a concern, and that's why we're trying to make this as short as possible.
And I believe that we're limited to a certain season for this kind of construction, given the rains and soil preservation and all that, right? We
That's
can't
correct.
do this outside of June to December.
Correct.
Okay. Any other, that's a good question, Katie. So at this point, we will be less resilient for those 6 weeks as these tanks are being constructed and replaced, for sure. Other questions, comments? Looks like Mr. Madrone has one.
Yeah, how old are the two tanks?
I don't know.
David, do you know how old the tank is that's being replaced?
That tank, I believe, was constructed in 1974.
The oldest one was from 70.
46 years, 48 years.
And the other one is slightly older, 1970?
I believe it's 2 years older.
One more time?
I believe it's 2 years older. The difference in the age is 2 years between the two tanks.
When you pointed out the difference of the straps that hold it all together, which is pretty phenomenal to see that amount of rust. So glad to see we're going with steel this time all the way around. I also had heard that the first tank that was built was done with old growth redwood lumber, whereas even just 6 years later, it was harder to get that same high quality. And I'm guessing that's partly why some of the stays, or not stays, but some of the boards are actually rotting. It's because we're not quite as high a quality as the original tank. Because with that old growth redwood and the steel straps, well, it's stuff 50 years or more to survive. That's a great thing. You're going to know what kind of condition you're going to be in terms of having enough water for fires and things like that based on the spring rains. Again, what I was talking about earlier. If we get good spring rains, it's a little bit wet into the early summer, we should be just fine to be able to pump at whatever level you need to. If it looks like we're going to have a really dry winter and spring, then it will become an issue of wanting to let people know to conserve during this period of replacement, which people are really good about doing that here. Additionally, the city is working on additional grants, as I understand it. There's a new program out right now through the Northwest Resource Partnership, whereby we might be able to get grants. And I'm trying to encourage the county also to get into this, where we could get grants to cost share with private landowners to put 5,000-gallon tanks in their backyard with rainwater collection. It will take a little bit of time to get those grants and get those things in place. And I know there's the rainwater thing on the agenda, so I won't go too far into this. But having 100 5,000-gallon tanks around the community, that's another 500,000 gallons of water stored right in households where you might need it for fire protection, as long as it has the right nozzles on it and check valves between it and the city, so you can't backflow and all those things. But that's going to be a major part of this resiliency effort, to get as many of us on rainwater collection and storage. And guess what? If the rain's there, then you can water your garden and your lawns and stuff like that. But if not, it's backup for emergencies. And the beauty of that distributed storage is there's no responsibility to the city on maintaining any of that, right? Whereas this is all on the city for O&M. So when you do the distributed storage, that also helps maintain low water rates by having that backup water for fire or gardening or other things. So again, kudos for all of you on your work on this. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any last questions, comments for Dagan from the council or from the public? Thank you very much for your time, Dagan, and for your presentation.
Great, thank you.
Right.
And Dagan's going to stay with us for this next item. Becky will be leaving, but he'll be.
Right on. Let's see. Item number 2, project update discussion on rainwater catchment demonstration.
Yes, so this item deals with a demonstration function that we wanted to create in the city to basically what Supervisor Madrone was talking about. So this way we can encourage various property owners to see how it's being done and how it could work out on their site. So I'll turn it over to Becky, and then she can get into a little bit more detail on it.
Thank you, Eli. So I don't have a presentation, and really this is just an update to the council about our plans to create a demonstration project for how to install a rainwater catchment system. And briefly, a rainwater catchment system is using a collection area such as a roof and plumbing that into a tank or a rain barrel, so they can range in size. And that tank is used for watering, outdoor water use. So it's not intended, and I'm sorry about my dogs barking in the background. It's not intended for using for potable or indoor use, and but it would be for watering your garden or washing your car or some other use that doesn't require treated water. So, I don't know if you guys want me to take a minute and go and put my dog out. Is it too loud?
No, it's fine.
It's fine.
Okay, so no one else is home, so I'm trapped. Okay, so the city had this component in our stormwater project originally, and it was planned to be perhaps at the Saunders Park. We had difficulty at the beginning of our project getting the proper site control, so we took it out of the project. And so now here we're at the end of the project to do the stormwater improvements, and we have additional budget. And I heard from Jennifer that council is interested in doing a demonstration project. So the grant funder has expressed willingness to consider funding this. So we're in the process of coming up with the request to add a demonstration project. So we will, actually, let me back up. The school across the street from City Hall is interested in having a project. So it would be using their bus barn roof and plumbing the water to a tank that could water their school garden, which is right next to the bus barn. And so it seems like a perfect project for what we're looking for in this realm of having a demonstration. And it could be available to the public at certain times. And it looks like we could construct it next summer if everything is approved. We also have looked at a couple other demonstrations for smaller rainwater catchment systems, so that people wouldn't have to feel like they would need a large tank, 5,000 gallon tank or 2,000 gallon tank. They could start with a rain barrel. So we are looking at a couple ideas for that, and we'll come back to council with questions for direction if needed. But we're intending to request money from the funder to do some demonstration of this rainwater catchment. So, and I'll just get questions or comments.
Becky, the demonstration tank at the school, it's intending to be 5,000 gallons? Is that sort of where we're starting with this project?
So Steve Allen came and visited the site with city staff and Elise, the school principal. And GHD is going to come up with their recommendation based on the size of the roof catchment area and the water needs for the garden. So it would be sized appropriately to the need there. But the public could understand based on our educational materials that we would produce that we have a range of sizes that are possible in these kind of projects.
Okay, great. Questions, comments for Becky regarding this?
I just have a comment, which is that I think it's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we do at the school. We're really passionate about rainwater catchment and the water advisory committee. And I personally have a rain barrel that I haven't hooked up yet. So if I get that hooked up, it could be an example. But anyway, thank you for pursuing that.
Agreed. Questions from the public?
Keep coming up here. Again, kudos for this work. And Cheryl, great work on the pamphlet that you put together with staff's assistance, I'm certain, but really fantastic things. And what a great place to start at a school, educational, right? I mean, couldn't ask for a better partner. And they've had such a fantastic garden program, as many of you may know, that they used to be on the food subsidies program, like so many schools are, and hardly any families signed up for it. Whereas when they shifted over to the organic produce coming right out of their own gardens, they got an abundance of people signing up for the food program. So great work by the parents and staff over there at the school on that. 5,000 gallon tanks or smaller are exempt from the uniform building code. So that's an incentive. Now that doesn't mean you don't want to build it properly and have a good solid surface underneath the tank, but it can be sand. It doesn't have to be concrete. You just want a well-compacted, level site in the right location. It's also true that the state of California passed a law 2 years ago that exempts these kinds of water storage improvements from being a property improvement. So normally when you do things on your property, you end up getting taxed for those improvements as a property improvement. So the state with the drought realized we need to incentivize more storage. So these kinds of facilities where you're collecting water off a hard surface and putting it into storage tanks are exempt from property tax improvements, which is another form of an incentive. The third place you can embed incentives is in your general plan and zoning. So as you're doing your general plan, I'm sure there's a lot of information in there on the water element, whatever it's called nowadays, about wanting to incentivize all kinds of water storage and things like that. And the way that happens is once you get your general plan done, and I agree with you, Cheryl, double down right now because we've been close before, and then 10 years go by and now you have the requirements and stuff. So getting that done is so imperative, and I appreciate your strong push for that. But once you get the general plan done, then in ordinances that you produce, the zoning ordinance and others, you can further incentivize this kind of activity for people in the community. And then the last thing is having templates, which your pamphlet did a lot for, and there are other templates that could be brought forward so that it makes it really easy for people to go small with a barrel or even as much as the 5,000 gallon tank. These 5,000 gallon tanks fully installed and plumbed were running about $10,000 about a year and a half ago. I'm guessing now that cost is probably about 12 or 13 with the supply chain issues, inflation and the rest of it. So if we can get grant money, which I know it's out there, to cost share with landowners, 75%, 90% cost shares. So the landowners put something into it, so they're committed to the project. But whatever we can do to do that, like I said, we can get a lot of water storage throughout West Haven, Trinidad, North Trinidad, that will be imperatively important during fire protection and things like that. But great activities here.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Becky, with this project, is there talk of some sort of educational placard sign near the tank to show people what, just like a schematic of what a water catchment system looks like and so on and so forth?
Yes, it would include probably an interpretive sign of some sort, and we'll have to work that out with the school. because it's at the side of the bus garage, there's potentially room for a sign on the garage, on the side that's facing the garden. And then I imagine that we would also have some materials available on the city's website that accompany the provide additional information about doing these tanks, about how to do the project. There are a couple requirements if you have a tank. I don't know the details, but over a certain size, you would need to install a backflow prevention device on your water service from the city water connection to prevent, and this is maybe going into more detail than I need to, but to prevent contamination of the city's water if somehow the flow reversed and sucked a little bit of water out from the property owner's system into the water. So anyway, there's some special safeguards, but that could all be explained and just like a nice package of information guiding people about how to do these projects.
Thank you very much.
And I want to also thank Jennifer Hakkinen for her assistance on this. She's been helping with coordination, and she actually kind of asked me if there was funding for anything like this. And it jogged my memory that we had a project in this larger stormwater project. So it was very good timing all around. And so it seems like it's going to be a good project.
Well, I agree. Jennifer has been a big help in this project too. So thank you, Jennifer, for your involvement. Any parting or final questions, comments for anyone on this topic? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 3, discussion decision regarding letter of support for Humboldt Waste Management Authority's edible food recovery program. Mr. Naffa.
Excuse me. The 7 cities in the county, along with the county and the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, have been working on organic recycling, and as a result, it was suggested that we send a letter of support that have the Humboldt Waste Management Authority be able to act in regional capacity for the purpose of organics processing. And as the letter says, securing flow control of organic materials in order for the entire county to move forward with organics processing and recycling. So we had previously this year passed an ordinance dealing with organics recycling and reduction. And this is the next step in that process, working with the county and the surrounding, well, not necessarily surrounding cities, but the other cities in the county. So it suggested that we approve this letter and send it off to Humboldt Waste Management Authority as a letter of interest and support for this ability for that they could do the organics processing on site on Hawthorne in Eureka.
Good. Questions, comments for Eli?
Well, since about 70% of our waste is organic, I love the idea of, everybody can do it on their own at home, but having this kind of services.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what it looks like. We don't need to get into the details, but I'm very anxious to see what it's going to look like. I hope it's not curbside pickup. That's all I got to say. Jack alone has bears named and coming over for coffee in the morning. They're such regular.
It's a lot more.
We
More beers.
we don't. Any questions, comments from the public regarding this action to send a letter of support? Mr. Madrone.
think that's why I showed up tonight. I saw these wonderful items.
Yeah, you've got a lot to share.
It's been
Plus you miss us.
been a while and I'm not campaigning anymore, so I got a little more time.
There you go.
I sit on the Humboldt Waste Management Authority Board, just for, disclosure. And this is a new law, as you all know, that came forward that we have to do this. Exactly how it's going to work and what it's going to look like. Yes, there are issues with varmints and all those kinds of things, but typically they're coming to the garbage because of meat and things like that in the garbage, not so much vegetables or like that, but it does have to be figured out. Additionally, we're trying to make sure that we don't penalize those folks that are already composting in their backyard in a way that doesn't bring varmints in. You can simply put a nice big metal grate over your compost bin and the coons and others can't get into it. I've been composting for years. I produce over 100 bags of soil at $12 a bag per year out of my compost system. But then I've got about an acre of lawn to mow, and my kids make fun of me. I said, I'm collecting worm food, kids. That's your business. Mowing lawn. So we don't want to penalize people that are already doing it at the source, because that's actually the most cost-effective way to compost, is do it right at the home, at the source, and you get the benefit of having this beautiful compost. We're also hoping that, right now we don't have a facility that's going to be able to actually turn this into fertilizer or something else. So we're going to be collecting it, processing it, but then it's going to be getting shipped out initially, unfortunately, which is a huge carbon footprint. It's all these trucks hauling that down to Ukiah or somewhere else. What we're hoping to be able to do is take this organic waste and put it together with the fish waste from Nordic that comes online and produce a fertilizer product that would handle all the fertilizer needs in Humboldt for all of our parks and things like that. And if we're going to haul something away, let it be a value added product where we put some additional value in it so that we're really getting something for that trucking. So there's some big picture stuff there, but in order for any of this to happen, it requires all the city and the county all to be working together to have enough flow control to actually make it economical. So I appreciate the city's support for this. Answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. All right. Bringing it back to the council, if there's no other discussion, don't see any on the Zoom. Bring it back to council. Do we have a motion regarding this item?
Would move to approve the letter from Mayor Ladwick regarding to Humboldt Waste Management Authority regarding creating capacity for organic reduction and recycling.
We got first from Kelly, second from Tuttle. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Our last item for this evening is decision to begin the recruitment process to fill expiring planning commissioner terms. Mr. Naffa, you want to cover this, or do you want?
Yeah, actually, I'll let Gabe take care of it.
Okay.
This is our city clerk.
Okay.
Yeah, this will be easy. I just, every year, this time of year, we have expiration of planning commission terms. They run 4 years. And 2022, 2024, those are the terms that we're looking at right now. We've got 3 of them that'll expire. And in the packet, I think I made an error, and I just want to clarify it, and I'll fix it in minutes. That I believe Tristan Cole's position, I have term expires in 2022. It's actually Diane Stocks that we will miss. But I did a little research on this stuff. This is time here with the city, and it went all the way back to 2013, and she was appointed.
Oh, wow.
Time just flew by. I really thought that she was not up until 2 years from now, but she's put quite a bit of time in. So it's Richard Johnson's term, Aaron Hakenen, who is filling in the next term that really just went. Whose it was, but he was filling in for a term, and then Diane Stocks is done. So they have the I have a hope, and I've heard a little bit of whispers that 2 of them would like to possibly continue, and I've got some interest from the public so far, but this process here is just to formalize the vacancy understanding amongst the community, and we'll start publishing immediately. In fact, we did already. Right. So we get some things in the hat formally, and we'll bring them back as soon as we either possibly in December, but more than likely in June.
So we would have a new council after the election results are certified. We hopefully do that in December, or is that ambitious to have that certified in
It
December?
depends on the date of the certification. County Elections Office has, I think, 30 days or a month to certify the election results.
Okay.
So if that certification comes in before our council, which we then can, as a city, certify the results that we've received,
Right.
then we can move along with our new council. Calendar looks like our meeting's on the 13th.
That's
So
okay.
we should have those results. And we should be able to plan on preceding.
Right. And the reason I ask is because if we're asking folks to submit any kind of interest by December 9th, at our December meeting, we could appoint planning commissioners.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Fabulous.
That's the goal, and they can start as soon as January.
Yeah.
Unless we want to seek them and have them fill the meeting.
Right. Okay. So just, I guess, as folks are out there talking to anyone who's interested in the planning commission, this is the real workhorse of the city. The planning commission does an immense amount of work, not only reviewing permits, work on the general plan, creating ordinances, keeping the short-term rental ordinance up to date, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of really good work that happens on the planning commission. So as you're out there in the community, encourage folks to, with any interest, to either seek more information, get their information in by December 9th, so that we don't have a period without a planning commission, right? So we can't have a discussion at the beginning of the meeting about how we got to keep the general plan going, and then at the end of the meeting say, unless we don't have anybody to be on the planning commission. So it's really, we need to really encourage folks to participate. And I don't know the best place to find out more information. Is Richard Johnson someone that, how do we refer folks who wanted to get more information about the planning commission? Just talk to any city staff? Are there any current commissioners who would be willing to answer questions? I'm just thinking, sometimes it's nice to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
I mean, you were what, 2 years on that?
3
Commission,
years, I
3
think.
years?
2 years
Yeah.
as chair. I'm happy to take questions
Yeah.
if anyone has them, and I'm sure Richard Johnson would be
Yeah.
as well.
It's just, I mean, with such a small city, we need to really keep the home fires burning. So.
And also, the way our ordinance is written, out of the 5 planning commissioners, 2 of them could live outside the city limits.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. And that's where you see city resident and Trinidad area resident on here. 2 of our commissioners are outside the city limits, but still within the area. Really think about really just the West Haven, Big Lagoon, that area. So any questions, comments from the community, the Zoom land? All right. Do we need an action on this? Discussion decision? Nope.
No.
Recommended action, authorize staff. We so do. Thank you for that update. And that concludes our regular discussion decision items. At this point, do we have any calls for future agenda items? I know that we will continue to seek input from the Planning Commission on elements, the 9 elements that we're working on for the general plan. So that's an ongoing. I believe the timing was off, that the Planning Commission wasn't able to get the latest element to us for this meeting, but any other future agenda items that folks want to see on the discussion?
I had a bench last time, so.
Yeah, I think I look back at the ones from our last meeting, and it might be good to make sure we keep those close, because it looks like a lot of them I'd like to make sure we're still working with those.
Such as, can you refresh our
Well,
memory?
we got the water plan update, which is really nice, and roles and responsibilities of the city manager and the city council. We just want to keep these things going. And website improvement, we got that taken care of. And talked about traffic calming measures in this. We talked about law enforcement too, so these things are just some ideas that came up last time. I don't want to say it again, but I just like to make sure we keep those from last month forward. So
Yeah, maybe law enforcement.
Yeah, law enforcement, you were gonna look into, or someone was gonna look into the feasibility of a private company for some
Yeah,
additional
so Eli
hours.
and I spoke about that. We talked about that, and then I believe we were able to get more deputy coverage. So that may be what we want.
Okay,
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
for people? Is just sort of what is the coverage today? What
Right.
hours? All that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
we don't want to put hours and days out there, just,
yeah.
I'm just gonna
but-
say that every time. We
Oh,
don't
no,
wanna,
no,
yeah,
no.
we
Agree. Not
Yeah,
specific.
we're very safe on Monday, Wednesday,
Yeah, I
Friday,
was
from
saying-
10 to 12, and
Not
that's
the 9
it.
to 5 hours.
Yeah, no,
The, total.
total hours. Thank you. I get really nervous
But I
when
know I
people
totally-
start saying the actual hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we could have that as we can collect our information, see what we have for updates. And then our lieutenant, you said he was at a training, I forget his name, Lieutenant.
Yeah, Lieutenant Josh
McCall, yeah. It might be nice the next time, just for all of us to remember to kind of get a pulse on what's happening with local law enforcement and their ability to hire and retain deputies and whatnot. Because at one point, I think we were down 14, 15 deputies.
up to 25.
25.
in the child.
Wow. Actually,
Yeah.
you might, from the county, Steve, do you have an update just real quick on the sheriff's ability to recruit and retain deputies?
Yeah, so in January of this year, we provided the greatest raise package in the history of Humboldt County
Okay,
to our deputies as well as all of our county staff. Within 2 to 3 weeks of that, we finalized in January. Sheriff Hansel was on the TV saying that those raises, as well as the benefit package improvements, had a dramatic positive impact on recruitment, retention, and morale.
good.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I think we have a long way to go because inflation has kind of eaten up a lot of those raises for all of us. We're all struggling with gas, food, rents, and things like that. So it's a new era. What used to be, minimum wage is like $15.50, it's gonna be $16 an hour. You can flip a burger for $20 an hour now. And they say across the country, on average, that for every 3 jobs, there's one person applying. So we have a serious
Oh, wow.
job issue of personnel.
Yeah.
There was the great resignation after the pandemic. A lot of people just said, I'm done, I'm retiring. The older folks like myself, whatever, but, bottom line is it has made improvements and we were able to hire a lot of deputies and hold on to them. But as a board, we're going to have to continue to look at these issues and find a way to be able to raise wages to at least stay even with cost of living. Otherwise, we're going to be right back where we were before.
Yeah.
So it is an improvement and I'm grateful for that. They work really hard, and doing a lot of things. And we're also creating a lot more programs to work with the deputies, street outreach workers, crisis workers, because a lot of the stuff they're dealing with on the streets is a whole new realm of mental health, behavioral health, all kinds of other things. And sometimes person with a bad and job isn't necessarily the way to de-escalate with some of those folks, although you're certainly glad they're there with you. Right? So I'm certainly not a defund the police person. I'm all about let's provide more training and more support to our deputies so that we can deal with where we're at. But things are looking much better. Grateful for it.
Thank you. And we can still kind of see if there's any traction on
Right.
supplementing whatever we need to with Blue Lake and just all kinds of creative ideas. So if you do come up with other future agenda items, don't hesitate to reach out. We're all available. Otherwise, the meeting is adjourned and thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
What's that? Oh, right. I can hit that.
speaking.
And also close to HDM, if anyone hasn't heard of.
Yeah.